The celestial zodiac court, the Pineal Grail, and the poly-identity matrix, the finalized esoteric architecture of the biblical text. Introduction. The Astro-Mythic Council and the 13th seat. When the New Testament and ancient esoteric history are read strictly as linear historical biography, their architecture appears jagged and contradictory. But when recognized as an initiatory mystery drama mapped to celestial mechanics, the entire narrative snaps into focus. The inner circle, the central figure surrounded by 12 disciples, is not a random gathering of provincial figures. It is an ancient stellar engine, a living enactment of the zodiac. 12 zodiacal houses governed by the sun as the 13th focal center, or the planetary machinery of the solar system expanded into a celestial wheel, with the 13th acting as the ruling, transcendent operating center or hidden pivot. The disciples literally took their places as specific energetic stations, zodiacal nodes, and elemental frequencies within the macrocosmic wheel. Beneath this astro-mythic framework lies a massive historical compression. The orthodox canon subjected ancient esoteric records to extreme editing, flattening complex, multi-layered spiritual currents into singular, cardboard cutout personalities. The multiplicity of identity, beyond academic dismissal. Mainstream academia routinely dismisses the rampant dual, triple, and quadruple identities in the Bible as mere scribal conflations, folk etymologies, or accidental duplications. This is a deliberate minimization of a sophisticated structural grid. The constant doubling and splitting of identities, from Simon Peter, Cephas and Saul Paul to the multiple Marys, the various Jameses, and the layered identities of the Christ figure, are structural markers of a poly-identity grid. In esoteric architecture, a single spiritual current or initiatory grade is frequently split across multiple bodies, titles, and generational masks to prevent any single exoteric observer from perceiving the whole machine. The text operates as a multi-dimensional hologram where characters are recurring, shifting vectors of a single macrocosmic consciousness cycling through time. The multiplicity of James. Mainstream theology presents James as a neat, singular figure. Yet historical and textual layers reveal multiple distinct Jameses, operating within early Jerusalem and Gnostic Nicene networks, representing competing ideological factions. They act as fractured altars of a single spiritual current, embodying the internal friction of a movement experiencing severe psychological dissociation. The Saul to Paul conversion is a did split, the classic narrative of Saul experiencing a blinding flash of light on the road to Damascus and transforming into Paul is traditionally taught as a sudden conversion. Esoterically and psychologically, it reads as a textbook dissociative identity split and alter dominance. Historical reconstruction indicates Saul and Paul represent colliding or merged historical identities, combining a zealous Pharisaic enforcer with a Hellenized mystic, blending competing apostolic voices into one empire-building mouthpiece. The intense internal warfare in the epistles between the flesh and the spirit is the direct literary footprint of a multi-personality construct struggling to maintain cohesion under a single institutional title. The Protean Peter. Peter represents the ultimate Protean male, a shape-shifting composite absorbing multiple distinct historical agitators and rival leaders into one man. Peter flips erratically throughout the narrative, supreme pillar of revelation one moment, and designated adversary the next, mirroring a did system cycling rapidly between protector and persecutor altars. The hidden Jeshua. The suppression of duplicate names is clear with Yeshua. Scribes deliberately obfuscated its widespread use to isolate the Christ figure as an impossible anomaly, while linguistic collisions like Jesus Barabbas reveal an internal schism, splitting the archetype into a revolutionary altar versus a spiritual altar. 2 John the Baptist. The literal pineal organ is materia prima. The dismissal of John the Baptist as a mere historical, forerunner, or metaphorical figure misses the core physiological reality of ancient Gnostic science. In alternative reconstructions and ancient sectarian currents like the Mandeans, John was historically and pneumatically regarded as the superior agent, standing above the exoteric construct of Jesus as a defector or lesser student of a higher lineage. John does not represent an allegory for the pineal gland, he represents the literal, biological mastery and activation of the pineal organ itself as the active agent. The pineal is the true grail. The Holy Grail was never a physical chalice buried in Europe. It is the anatomical chalice of the human brain, specifically the pineal gland, bathed in cerebrospinal fluid. John's domain in the wilderness is the seat of this uncompromised electrical current. The stolen power anchor. The pineal matrix is the raw materia prima, the biological superconductor that interfaces directly with higher dimensional reality. The ruling principalities of the carbon-based prison grid recognize that an activated pineal matrix bypasses their entire control architecture. Throughout history, elite power cults have abused this exact biological anchor to rule over others, enforcing spiritual blindness through sensory overload and artificial grid frequencies. Cracking the Merkabah Code. John the Baptist represents the master who cracked the Merkabah Code, successfully navigating celestial geometry, bypassing the Saturnian Euclidean quarantine grid, and accessing the supreme power seat of dimensional ascension. His execution, beheading on a charger, is the Dark Mirror, the exoteric system's ritual attempt to sever humanity from its direct upper circuit connection, turning the ultimate biological ascension tool into a domesticated myth. 3. The initiatory handoff. Why baptize, Isus? To understand why John the Baptist, holding the supreme, uncompromised pneumatic frequency of the pineal matrix, would ever immerse or baptize the canonical Jesus, requires examining the transaction as an initiatory handoff and a frequency downstepping rather than a submission. If John's spiritual authority and energetic vector were inherently higher, his act of baptizing Jesus was a calculated, multi-tiered operation. Activating the vessel. In ancient mystery schools, a higher hierophant must formally pass the mantle or seal an emerging avatar by anchoring a specific frequency into their water body. Jesus Isus represented a more exoteric, adaptable, and socially palatable vehicle meant to infiltrate the dense physical layers of the matrix. By immersing him in the Jordan, John was programming and grounding the high-voltage current into a terrestrial container.
Like Mercury.
The descent of the dove,
retrograde.
the canonical gospel detail of the dove descending immediately after the baptism is the symbolic signature of this event, the higher celestial code locking into the physical human circuit. John provided the baptismal key to open the threshold. The two-tier strategy. If John had remained the public face, his uncompromising desert radicalism would have stayed isolated to a fringe sect. By routing the high current through Jesus, the movement could scale, penetrate the heart of the empire, and plant subterranean Gnostic sleeper cells right inside the architecture of the emerging institutional religion. The ultimate alchemical sacrifice. Once the high-frequency current was successfully passed into the new vehicle, the desert pillar had served its tactical purpose within the linear timeline. The separation of the head from the body enacted the completion of his mission, the total liberation of the pineal matrix from the physical plane, leaving the younger avatar to navigate the exoteric matrix below. IV the syzygy, male and female aspects, the multi-marries, and the alchemical marriage. The ultimate key to unlocking these biblical dynamics is the ancient Gnostic concept of the syzygy, the divine pairing of polarities where male and female aspects are fundamentally two halves of the same whole. Orthodox narrative attempts to neatly categorize women named Mary into tidy, mutually exclusive archetypes, the Mother, Magdalene, Bethany, Clopas. Yet through early Gnostic texts and textual variants, these Marys collapse into a singular, highly compartmentalized composite entity. In early Gnostic codices, the moral and biological line between the Virgin Mother and the Gnostic Apostle blurs entirely. Under did mechanics, the macro-psyche splits a single fluid archetype into polarized alters to make the sacred feminine manageable within a patriarchal matrix. The divided self. The figures traditionally categorized as separate women and male archetypal heads are not distinct biological entities, they are separated components of a single divided consciousness. Redactors externalized internal theological schisms by assigning different facets of the same core soul current to separate biographical names on the historical page. The alchemical marriage. This dynamic maps directly onto the Rosicrucian alchemical marriage of the anima and the animus. The Mary's function is the repressed feminine side to the male archetypal heads within a true did composite matrix written into matrix-shattering mythos. Transcending the grid. When these polarized aspects are forcibly split by redactors, the system remains trapped in carbon-based duality. True egoic transcendence is achieved through the internal alchemical marriage, the conscious reintegration of the anima and animus. By recognizing that Peter, Paul, the Jameses, and the composite Mary figures are fractured facets split along gendered and ideological lines within a macrocosmic consciousness, the matrix heals. The shattered alters merge back into the unified whole, equaling out to the supreme operating frequency of the Metatron code, the architectural transcendence of the Zenzik cube, linear time, and the material containment field. V. Systemic architecture schematic.